Hi again then guys, and welcome to another look back into the past of the Gran Turismo franchise, to Gran Turismo 2, my personal favourite overall of the franchise, my entry point into it as well, to a vehicle which is not only a unicorn, in a very literal sense really, to the franchise, but also a car which really does deserve to come back, and I would say actually has a reasonably good chance of coming back. Not necessarily anytime soon, I don't have any insider information about that, and I wouldn't even put money on it, but as far as cars that do have any chance of returning, I would say that this one's probably quite high on the list, and there are a couple of reasons for that. Now, the car in particular is, of course, the probably most iconic non-Super GT Skyline race car maybe ever. The Celsonic is pretty well known, of course, but this one is the ultimate racing Skyline in some ways. It's the Le Mans GT1 version, which went up against the McLaren F1. It came second only to the McLaren F1, and it performed really well. Given that the McLaren is your rival, well, any car to go up against that has got to be pretty good, and the Skyline, the GTR in particular, proved that it had not necessarily what it took to beat it, but what it took to come close. And even to come close is pretty cool. To even be in the same playing field as a McLaren F1 is cool enough. But as far as this car on Gran Turismo 2, it is one of those race cars that you have to build yourself, to some degree, because it's based on a car which we've had for a much longer time, both on Gran Turismo and Forza. But the weird thing is, for some strange reason, weird reason, whatever you want to look at it as, they've decided in both franchises to feature the road version a lot more than the race car, despite the fact that the race car is both far more impressive when it comes to performance and, even more importantly, more historically significant. Because, of course, without the race car, there would be no need for the road version, and the road version that I'm referring to is, of course, the Nismo GTR LM road car. One of the least powerful homologation specials ever built, with around 300 horsepower. I believe only one was ever produced. Performance is okay in both Forza and Gran Turismo. It's a little bit underwhelming, especially given the price, but for superfans it's a great collector's piece. It certainly looks the part. It's just a shame, I think, that the car doesn't have maybe closer to 500 or 600 horsepower. That would be pretty awesome, and it would suit the car quite well. Now, on Gran Turismo 2, you need to buy that car in order to get this one, because you'll need to do the full race conversion to what is already a $500,000 credit base car. Then you can turn into this one. Now, you have a couple of colour options. You've got a blue and a pink. Both look pretty good, and the specs, when you tune them, go up accordingly. 690 horsepower in fully tuned form, 488 pound-feet of torque, and a reasonable weight of 1,350 kilos. Now, of course, it doesn't have a class or a PP level or anything like that back then, but what it does have is a whole lot of potential. Now, the disadvantage of a car like this, due to Gran Turismo 2's rating systems of allowing cars into certain races, which, funnily enough, parallels Gran Turismo Sport now, in a funny kind of way, was more based on power than anything else, just like the road car section in Gran Turismo Sport is. Back then, that meant that there were very specific cars that you could use in specific types of event which would utterly dominate and decimate the competition. The Nissan R33 is a perfect example. The road car in particular, due to the fact that it has inaccurate numbers, 350 horsepower instead of what it should have, which is around 550, allowed it to go into races which it could just destroy everything else, especially if you're going up against road cars. That's the slight disadvantage for this one, because as good as it is, it has so much power when you tune it up. And of course you don't have to fully tune it, but when you do, it can almost become overpowered or too overpowered for its own good, so that it gets too good for the vast majority of events. If though you do choose to build up the car for something more than just a collector's piece, which for that alone it's great, then it does have potential, for sure. As far as the way it performs, it's kind of like the road car, but exaggerated. The weight is lower, the power is, in particular, is far higher. You can get the tail out on this one, but the handling is basically what you'd expect it to be. It's very controlled for the most part. You can predict what it's going to do most of the time. It is definitely more tail happy than a normal Skyline though, even a GTR. and it has an interesting approach to racing, actually, which a lot of the other Skyline race cars don't have, because of the fact that they usually have all-wheel drive, and then the Super GT cars have ridiculous amounts of aero working in their favour. This one doesn't. It's from before that era. It has downforce, but not necessarily as much. It doesn't have all-wheel drive, so it's in more of a unique place because of the regulations. So if you do drive this car, it definitely offers something different to pretty much any other GTR, and if nothing else, it's an iconic car to have in your garage, and I would love to see this car return. In fact, I would happily have this car replace the road car, because it's so much more useful and so much more relevant. But that's it for this pick overall. Of course, I'll see you guys next time, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.